Hello, David Chatham here with Angel Oak Creative. This is our kickoff for our Tough Talks program for the year of 2021. I am here with Bear McBride, Director of Communications with Healing Transitions. How you doing, Bear?
Doing really well. Thanks for having me, David.
Yeah, I can't think of anybody to start our Tough Talks than a guy with a name like Bear.
Yeah, that's a pretty
You
tough
know
name.
what? I mean, nothing says tough like a bear. So I appreciate you spending some time with us today. The reason we're doing these tough talks and kind of making 2021 this year of the tough nonprofit, of kind of calling it the nonprofit tough, is kind of our theme this year. Um, you know, I think nonprofits sometimes get a rap of being a little soft, and that, because they're not for profit, there's some weakness there. But as you know, and I think most of our clients and everyone else knows, it takes a lot of work to be a really good nonprofit. You got to dig in
Yeah.
deep, you got to sacrifice, you got to, work those long hours, you've got to put in the extra time and thought. Not that business people don't do those things, but the limitations of capacity and budgets and wanting to do your service well, all of those things are challenges for nonprofits that are really unique to the industry. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on kind of the idea of what makes a tough nonprofit. But tell me a little bit about Healing Transitions, your role there,
Mhm.
and just kind of what's going on today as you enter 2021.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Healing Transitions. We're a nonprofit based out of Raleigh here, and we have multiple components to what we are. One, we are a homeless shelter. And a bigger part of what we do is we have a long-term recovery program for folks struggling with substance use and alcoholism, and struggling with homelessness and uninsured and just an underserved population. So that's who we serve, and that's what we do. We're really excited. This year, we're getting ready on January 15th. We'll be celebrating our 20th year of being in operation,
Congratulations.
and it's been a so much fun to go through our history and see like all the milestones that we hit, and just kind of see that tapestry of the impact that Healing Transitions has made from the beginning, back when it was called the Healing Place of Wake County. And so like we're just excited for 2021. We're going to be celebrating a lot of recovery and celebrating. We're going to be working with Angel Oak Creative and you guys, and we're excited to bring you guys with us, and it's going to be great. I'm the communications coordinator over at Healing Transitions, so I do all of the social media. I do all of the marketing. I do the website. I create content and get it up on all of our platforms. And I just generally try to use the resources that I have to try to grow our name and kind of get us, get us more supporters and things like that. So that's what I do. It's a big job. Like you said, there's a lot that goes into it. I always tell my team that, we're a team of 5 people, but we're doing the job of 25 people. And
Yeah.
we'll get into that later when we talk about being tough, but you're absolutely right about that. But yeah, I love this role. It's really a blessing to be part of this organization, and I look forward to move forward with them.
Well, great. Well, we certainly appreciate the work with you guys, and I have to say it's definitely not tough working with you. We enjoy that. So, I think what I really hope these conversations convey is to what it is to be a tough nonprofit, to not only just gut it out, but to thrive, right? I mean, we don't want to just have nonprofits that are kind of struggling to achieve, right? We want nonprofits that are thriving, because our community, a really good community, as your director, Chris Budnick, talks about a lot of the village, right? That it really takes a village to build a community that is strong and thriving and solid. And organizations like Healing Transitions that do the tough work with populations that have their own struggles, right, and their own challenges, certainly makes our community a better place. So thank you for the work that you're doing there, and for all the positive things you bring to Raleigh and the Triangle area. So it's a great resource for the community. I mentioned kind of this idea of nonprofits getting a bad rap of not being tough, or why do you think that is? Why do you think nonprofits maybe aren't seen as kind of these tough organizations, or many of them anyway?
Yeah, I think if you were to ask me this question based on the day, you'd probably get a different answer day to day. It all depends on what you're experiencing that day. But I think you actually touched on it, and the thing that's been kind of rattling in my brain since I kind of read that question is that the idea that nonprofits aren't for profit, and we live in a capitalistic society. Like, we are built upon capitalism, where you earn your keep, you make what you make your own money and stuff like that. And nonprofits, we rely on donations and getting support from the community. So I think that when you talk about nonprofits might having a softer reputation, I think that's where the main thing comes from. I remember I worked for an NPR station in Michigan a few years ago, and that's also nonprofit radio. And we had a lot of strong supporters, but when it came down to our two big fundraisers, twice a year, we do a week long. I mean, you listen to NPR, you know what it's like when you hear the fundraising drive. You get a lot of feedback on that, a lot of negative feedback at times, just because it's constantly asking for money. And I think that there kind of drives a nail into where the soft reputation might come from. We're asking for money, we're asking for support. I don't think it has that deep of a bad reputation. I'd like to know what the reputation was like back when nonprofits really started a long time ago.
Right.
But I think that's kind of where it kind of derived from.
Yeah. What are, from your experience with nonprofits, the NPR and Healing Transitions and others, what are some of the unique challenges that make it a little tough for nonprofits to succeed or to thrive?
Yeah, by far, and we've touched on it, is just resources and staffing and having that team. A lot of times people don't understand how much work goes into a nonprofit until they actually start working in a nonprofit, which was exactly my experience. I had no intention of working in a nonprofit when I was going through college and stuff like that. I just thought they were very similar as to any other corporate gig that I might get. But when you get into being in a nonprofit, you realize just how many hats every single person wears. And like, when you work in corporate, you might have that 20-25 person team that you can lead and have all of those, those brains to bang ideas off of and stuff like that. But when you're working in a nonprofit, you're really a big percentage of that team, and you're wearing a lot of hats. So by far the biggest challenge, and I'm sure you'll get that answer from anyone that you ask, is just one person does the job of 5 people, and that's every single person in that nonprofit organization. So when you're working in a nonprofit, you learn how to be tough. You don't rely on other people. You don't need to rely on other people. And when you do, you kind of get left behind.
Right.
And so working in a nonprofit really, really builds that strength.
Great. And talk, if you would, kind of how you touched on it a little bit. How would you define a tough nonprofit, or what does nonprofit tough look like through your eyes?
Yeah. Being nonprofit tough is being resilient.
Okay.
In the face of any challenge that's posed to you. And you are seeing it unlike any other time that we've been alive right now with the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah.
Nonprofits are being challenged. Yeah, nonprofits are being challenged just unbelievably because of the pandemic. Completely understandable why. And they're being so resilient. It's been incredible to watch, not just Healing Transitions, but so many other of our nonprofit partners make our way kind of through this weird time that we're going through, and where everyone is kind of is getting hit in different ways and struggling in their own unique way. And yet us as nonprofits, when we rely on supporters to have our mission continue going, we're still making it through. And in cases like Healing Transitions, we're continuing to grow at a pace that is pretty surprising and extraordinary.
Yeah, the community's really stepped up this year. Talk about some of the challenges that came with 2020. With starting around March when kind of our world changed with a global pandemic coming on board.
Yeah.
What were some of the challenges that made it maybe a tough year?
So, for Healing Transitions specifically, our mission is, we turn nobody away. You can come to our door as many times as it takes, because that's what recovery is. It can take many, many times before you kind of get the hang of it, and you can live a life thriving in recovery. And since we opened, in January of 2001, we have never had to say no or close our doors. And when COVID-19 happened for the first time in that 20-year history, we had to do that. And that alone, it was such an incredible experience. I feel all of us had the same feeling of, we got closer as a team for sure. We worked unlike we've ever had to work before, just to go through that experience of, okay, so what do we do now? There were staff members at Healing Transitions that were being asked to take leadership roles that I'm sure they've never even come close to yet. And they stepped up and they absolutely, knocked it out of the park. And so for Healing Transitions, it was, we had to shut our doors for the first time. And even though we're doing that, there's still a need. There are still people out there that are struggling with substance use disorders, and they really need our help. And we get asked every day, and we were getting messages from folks. Yeah. And so luckily, thanks to so many of our Wake County partners, DHHS, and I wish I could remember all of them. I should have wrote that down to list them all, just to give them a little shout out. They helped us put a plan in place, and we opened a detox center that was not on our campuses. It was held on a different property, and that had 8 beds for men and 8 or 6 for women, and we continued to serve. And then while we were doing that, we were putting together a plan of, okay, well, how do we operate even though this pandemic, it's not going to go away? We have to open our doors back up. And so thanks to those partners and thanks to our staff and all of our incredible supporters, we came up with a plan of how we're going to have to do it on more of a limited capacity, which is kind of where we're running right now. And that, the biggest challenge for us is just having to put, we might be in a situation, and it doesn't happen too often, thankfully, but of maybe having to make somebody wait. Yeah. And because when it comes to addiction and recovery, every second counts, every moment matters. And that's been the biggest difficulty for us, I'd say.
Right. Well, one of your jobs or one of your tasks at Healing Transitions is to really help tell the story of Healing Transitions, right? As your role as communications coordinator, or as I like to call you, director of communications.
Yeah.
What does that look like? Storytelling for a tough nonprofit, right? Or a nonprofit because you've had to really communicate clearly during this time for people, your donors, your supporters, your partner organizations. What does that look like to tell that story during a tough time?
Yeah, so that's interesting because I think it had multiple phases. And the first phase was, okay, well, one of our philosophies is we need to be transparent with everything that's going on. And so we worked with Angel Oak, you guys, me, Chris, our development director at the time, Lauren Williams, and Laura Blank, who does our PR. We all came together and we created kind of our, response webpage to give exactly what we're doing step by step. What have we experienced? Has anyone been tested? Kind of things like that. And so that was the first kind of obstacle and challenge of painting what's going on. But after that came this, for communications coordinator or anyone who is telling stories and stuff like that, became a dream scenario because every day became a story. And right. So you can literally day to day, there was something new that you could, work with. And we luckily we had some really good news articles that came, our way because of that. And I had wished at the time that I I could have done kind of a documentary about it, because it really was incredible to watch and
Wow.
experience and to tell that story. But so there was that dream phase of every day is a story. It's going to be great and stuff like that. And it was because we were doing well, and I'm really proud of what we do. You know, we didn't have anything that was like bad or no debacles that happened. Thankfully, thank God. But then came this kind of period of stagnation where, well, now everyone has this kind of everyone said the word, we're going through this unprecedented time. I read that so many times. I got so sick of the word unprecedented. It was ridiculous. And so then became the challenge of, okay, so now we have to do something out of the box that's new. And thankfully we have great resources that help us do that, like you guys.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. It's, I love how you turn, that crisis into an opportunity, right? And I think that's the opportunity that tough nonprofits are able to do, is to be resilient, to pivot, to be strategic in the face of these challenges, right? And really approach them as opportunities. So that, I think that's great. On a daily basis, if when maybe COVID doesn't isn't part of our daily conversation, and we don't use words like unprecedented every day, what are some of the ways that you try to capture those compelling stories? That how is Healing Transitions really? How have you helped set up a process of Healing Transitions to tell those compelling stories about the work that you're doing and about the great people who support you, about your partners? What does that look like?
Yeah. So I'm really thankful with Healing Transitions that like the culture of Healing Transitions is very much like, hey, listen to this awesome thing that this person did. Like, listen to this wonderful story of recovery. The different experiences that our alumni and our participants went through while going through the program since the very beginning, they're all so different. They're all so inspiring and motivating that I'm constantly being told of somebody new. When I first got hired, right off the bat, like day one, one of our rapid response coordinator, Justin Garrity, he was like just flinging names at me, like, you got to listen to this guy. Like, here's a story, do a blog on this, like boom, 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 boom. And it took me a long time to catch up on that. But luckily, that's the culture. Is everyone there was very much that they wanted to show somebody else, highlight somebody else. They're so proud of things that everyone else does. So I got lucky to be in a culture like that. And so to me, it was just finding which stories fit which platforms. And so right off the bat, we made our first podcast, Voices from the Village, where Chris, our executive director, talks to one of our community partners, which was different than anything that we've done before, because everything we've done is highlighting a story of an alumni. I mean, incredible stories, of course. Every one of them are impactful. But this is something different, where we actually get to talk about our relationship with Krav Maga Raleigh. Who knew that Krav Maga Raleigh did anything for Healing Transitions,
Well, for those who don't know what Krav Maga is, tell us what that is real quick.
Yeah, so Krav, I don't know a ton about Krav Maga. It's a fight. It's like a fighting style that developed from I think Israel. I'm so sorry, Krav Maga Raleigh.
No, that's all right. Yeah,
that. But they've given our staff like classes, training classes, and stuff like that, self-defense classes a lot, and they have such a great story. Like, there's the things that they've experienced. Like they went to the Middle East and helped train folks who were dealing with ISIS and things like that. It was just unbelievable.
Right.
But like, we have so many partners like that. And so that was the first thing that we did, was get a new platform, something completely new, on like a podcast. And then after that, it was like utilizing Angel Oak and their incredible ability to like make a video and try to find things that we can do with that. We have so many stories, so many great stories, and you guys really made some incredible content with some of our alumni. And it was just kind of piecing, all right, which stories should go where and things like that, to have kind of a balanced thing, communications stuff, as you know. But that's kind of where my brain was just kind of putting what story goes where, when, and stuff like that. And it's just been a lot of fun.
Well, I love the idea of a culture of storytelling, right? That people are, I mean, I think sometimes that's the biggest challenge for any organization, but especially nonprofits, because many nonprofits are really focused on just doing the work, right? I mean, you've got to serve those people who come into your detox center. You've got to serve them. And, sometimes you miss the stories, not intentionally, but because you're working so hard to do what you normally do. But the fact that your staff is mindful enough to say, wow, that's an incredible story. I really want to make sure Bear knows about that, right? I mean, that probably has to make your job easier and, gives you the opportunity to create these compelling stories that demonstrate, not just the work that you do, but your partner's work and the work that your residents, your staff, all of those folks do to create this successful opportunity for recovery, right?
Yeah. And it also, I think another huge thing that it does for us, and I think that you can do this at many, many different nonprofits, is that it just keeps us grounded to our mission. Mm-hmm. And so I remember, so I moved to Michigan back in June. I've been working remotely for Healing Transitions for the last 6 months. But before that, when I was working on campus, I would constantly see one of our staff members or my boss would be outside talking to a participant. And, she'd come back in and we'd talk about what she, talked to that person about. And she was just like, I was having a bad day. I was feeling bad about myself. I needed to hear someone, who needed to vent to me, and just kind of that, just being able to ground yourself in the mission, listening to those stories of those that you serve and stuff like that. It's just as important, probably more important, I'd say, than highlighting for marketing purposes or anything like that. It just keeps you connected to what you're doing.
Right. Well, that's awesome. I mean, Bear, you've shared a lot today about, tough nonprofits being resilient, that you're able to kind of bob and weave and adapt to what's going on, whether it's COVID or maybe, I know you've got a capital campaign going on. How are you doing those things? So, I think that's so important. I love the idea of this, having this storytelling culture that you've helped foster there at Healing Transitions, and that your staff have, it sounds like they haven't seen it as like extra work, right? They see it as an opportunity to really, go ahead. You want to say something?
Yeah. I mean, I think that we've all noticed the extra work, but I'm not hearing a lot of complaints about it. I think because everyone there is just so connected to the mission, and it's like a second home to everyone there. Because a lot of our staff came through the program itself. And so it is really home to them.
Personal, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so, even though we've definitely felt the crushing amount of work that it feels like COVID kind of put on us, we're still happy, smiling, tired, but, happy to do it.
Well, congratulations on all of that. Thank you for being the subject of our first episode of Tough Talks. And I appreciate that. I'm trying to keep them somewhat brief so that we respect people's time, but I certainly feel like there was a lot of meat here, a lot of toughness here. Hopefully it wasn't tough meat, but I think we've got a lot of good content here that we're definitely going to share with folks. And if people want to learn more about Healing Transitions, where can they find out more?
Yeah, they can go to healing-transitions.org, healing-transitions.org. That's our website, and you can find as much as you can on there. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We have a couple podcasts out. You can find us pretty much everywhere. Healing Transitions.
You're ubiquitous.
That's right.
So, well, good. Well, I appreciate that. Again, thank you for your partnership with Angel Oak Creative. We're really grateful for that. Any last piece of advice you would give to a nonprofit who really wants to be tough, to be strong, to be resilient? Any last piece of advice that you would offer to them?
No, because if you're working at a nonprofit, you know how tough you are. So just keep plugging along. You got this. Well,
Bear, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for the service that you do at Angel Oak, at Healing Transitions, and the amazing work that you guys do. We look forward to continue the relationship, and I'm hoping we have a chance to do another conversation here in the near future. So
yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. Yeah, thank you, David.
Take care. Best wishes.
You too.